Hi,
Hey, we got audio, we got video. How you doing?
we're rolling. I'm so excited to be on the Dr. Ben show.
Okay, yeah. I just
Thanks for
I
having me. I'm super excited to any chance I get to talk about really merging the two worlds of the physical alignment and the emotional and the energetic alignment. That's super important to me. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity.
okay, yeah, excited to be here. I've been following your work for a while, and I kind of want to give an introduction about you, but I also don't want to get it wrong. So I'm going to give an introduction, and then I'm going to ask you to kind of go into more detail and correct anything that I got wrong.
Perfect.
Um, but this is Mikaela, and she does work with people around healing past trauma that's holding us back in our present life, and through various modalities, breath work being one of them. But there's a lot of other things you do. So why don't you just kind of give the overview of like uh, what you help people with?
Absolutely. So you were spot on. My main focus is to help people heal from the past, heal from trauma, heal from shame, guilt. I started this work about 2 years ago with doing just Reiki. Reiki is my love language. If any of you out there don't know what it is energy healing through the hands. Um, and as I started my work, I really started to see this pattern within everybody, of the trauma that we have held on to in our bodies and in our subconscious. And so that really became a focus of mine and a passion of mine to use somatic release and allow people to really express their emotions that have been stuck, that they haven't been able to express. And so it's a beautiful work, the work that I get to see with people as they transform their lives when they start to really look at their trauma. Because there's one thing that doesn't happen in the pharmaceutical world, where you go to a doctor's office. There's not a lot of questions asked about people's pasts and certain experiences that they may have um, been been open to, or certain experiences that they may have recently that may have caused a trauma response. Those questions are really never asked in the doctor's office. And so when we suppress these things, and when we avoid looking at these things, and when we distract ourselves from these things, I truly believe that it is the number one root of disease. And so I personally have a journey of healing through the physical world, where I was diagnosed with a liver condition at the age of 27. And that really allowed, it was the catalyst into my healing journey. And so all of the beautiful information that I have found around trauma has not only helped me on so many different levels, but the clients that I see as well.
Sure, awesome, and that like sparked a ton of questions for me that I want to ask you, and I'm gonna remember all of them and what I want to ask next. Before we go, I would love to get deeper into your story if you're up for sharing it. Um,
Absolutely.
but when you talk about, releasing these emotions, are these things that people are consciously aware of or no, or is it a combination of some of it is, some of it isn't? Because I think a lot of people who have issues just kind of think that they might not have trauma, or that, the negative emotions that they're experiencing in life are because of other people or other circumstances. So I was just hoping you could expound on that, if that question makes
Absolutely. Thank you for asking me that. So what happens in our body and what happens in our subconscious is that when we experience a traumatic event or events, what happens is our defense system, our nervous system, it creates a response. It has a response that takes place to protect us. It is us going into survival mode. And a lot of the time when this happens, it's to essentially take us out of the experience so that we're not feeling it fully. So our bodies go into this defense mechanism, And what happens is over time, as we continue to operate from these mechanisms, because most of us are operating, I mean, all of us are operating from our subconscious. And every event that we experience is stored in our subconscious. And that's kind of wild to think about. I always joke, I'm like, can't we just like pick some of them and be like, I don't want that to be stored. Like, nope, that one I didn't like. I don't want to store that one. But all of the events that we experience are stored in our subconscious. And so a lot of us, just because of the conditioning of our childhood, the parenting that we experienced, society, a lot of us have not been taught how to look at these emotions and fully feel them. When you think about animals and you think about children, so, you know, animals who don't have ego, children who haven't developed the ego yet, their bodies naturally know how to go through the full cycle of emotion to fully discharge and expel it, the energy from their body. You know, they shake and they scream and they stomp. You know, they're breathing heavy. They're doing whatever they need to do to fully discharge that from their body. But when you think about how we were raised, a lot of us were told, no, don't do that. That's bad. You're acting out. Like, don't do that. That's bad. So we weren't able to fully go through that full cycle of emotions, right? So what happens in our life as we get older is that our body then operates from those defense mechanisms. So in the event of or events of traumatic experiences, when our nervous system starts to get to that level of fear, of nervousness, of whatever it may be, of doubt, whatever it may be, our body naturally wants to respond in the same way it responded to a traumatic experience. So we go back into these trauma responses, which a lot of people are unaware. So your question of like, are people aware of this? A lot of people are unaware of their trauma responses because we think a trauma response is like someone with rage or somebody with, you know, somebody who's depressed or whatever it may be. But trauma can show up in so many ways. Trauma can show up as people pleasing. Trauma can show up as victimhood of like blaming everyone else. It can show up not expressing your emotions at all. That's a huge trauma response. You know, reclusing, when somebody crosses a boundary, not speaking up right away. There's so many different ways that we turn to essentially safety in our body that can show up as a trauma response. And so a lot of people are operating from these places that they are fully even unaware that it is a trauma response. You know, there's a lot of people out there thinking, well, like, well, this is just how I was raised. So this is just me. But in all actuality, the suppression of those things and the distraction from looking at the actual emotional event, that is what's going to manifest in disease, you know, and even further emotional disorder, you know, and imbalance.
So, Mikaela, can you talk a little bit about why, you know, I'm sure a lot of people are dealing with this. The past 2 years have been very traumatic for pretty much everybody. Can you maybe talk a little bit about why there's a couple of common approaches out there. One is the psychiatric approach, you know, let's put you on medication for this. It's in your head. And then the other approach is talk therapy. Let's take you to a psychologist and just talk about it. And personally, in my experience, I've, you know, just having, you know, dealt with a lot of people with these issues, and a lot of them have gone that route and not getting any success. I'm sure it works for some people, but can you talk about why maybe it's not always a solution?
Absolutely. So I definitely think that there's a time and a place for talk therapy. You know, there's the work that I do is very extensive and deep in an emotional and energetic sense, that there's just some people that are not there yet to where they can jump into my room here and express fully. And so a lot of the people that have come into my room and discontinued talk therapy have expressed to me that it was because of the talk therapy that they were able to actually say things out loud, find the safety in saying certain things out loud, that it then created that bridge to come into the deeper work. But the thing about talk therapy is that, it's definitely important to express. Using your voice and using your throat chakra to express the things is one of the biggest ways and foundational ways to start healing. Is when you have shame around things and shame in the body, to speak about it is definitely the first step. However, these emotions, they in order to expel them from your body, it takes somatic work. And so what that means, soma being of the body, what that means is really, really bringing your awareness from the mind to the body, getting out of the mind, because through talk therapy, I know a lot of people can even get out of the therapist's office and still their mind is running around the conclusions that were found. So with this work, with this somatic work of releasing the energy and the trauma from the body, it takes movement and breath and reconnecting to those emotions. So I always talk about sacred rage and how important rage is. It's such a beautiful emotion when honored in a sacred and healthy way. And so, when it's expelled onto somebody in a very impulsive way, that's not what I'm talking about. To take it and realize you have that energy surging through your body, and then come into a safe space, whether that be out in nature, whether that be in a closed room, whether that be in your car. I always say a car is a great place to do it. But to activate that rage and to scream it out, and then to breathe it through your body, and then taking it back, whether it be like through a chant like huh, 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 or whatever it may be. You can utilize these emotions in a way that allows you to take your power back from them, instead of expelling them in a very impulsive way to where it literally takes your power. People I know, I don't think I know anybody who has had an impulsive rage fit and felt empowered afterwards, but there's ways to cultivate the emotions in a way where you are fully, I don't want to say like in control, but you are holding those emotions in a way where it's not taking your power. And so that is the beautiful part about what I do, is I feel like, as opposed to commercial therapists and talk therapists, and talk therapy, excuse me, I really love connecting to my clients emotionally. I'll cry with my clients, and I really think that's an important part of my work, because you just sometimes can't get there with a therapist.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, it's very interesting. You use that word somatic.
Mm.
So I don't want this to be a loaded question, but it sounds like what you're saying is that this emotion and this trauma is not just like in your brain. It sounds like it's in the body too as well. Would you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. There's a book called The Body Keeps Score, and I can't think of the author's name right now, but if
That's
anybody,
talk.
yes, yes, and it's incredible. I haven't finished it yet, but that's a great book to introduce this idea that emotions are stored in our physical body. And that's why, there's been so much kind of, I guess, controversy in the medical field around stress and trauma being the number one cause for disease. Because we can take our intellectual minds and try to place certain external things to say this is what caused the disease, food, environment, whatever, alcohol, whatever it may be. But essentially, it all comes down to why we are choosing certain lifestyles, why we are choosing to repeat certain patterns, why we are making the choice to live a certain way, to then create and repeat these patterns of what is also adding to the disease.
Okay, yeah, I think that frustrates modern medicine because they
Absolutely.
see the problem and they don't have a surgical or pharmaceutical solution to it,
Mm-hmm.
and or they can't quantify it with any sort of like machinery,
Right.
and they can't give it a name and drug it or cut it out of you, and
Right.
just want to deny that it even exists.
Well, and if I'm being completely honest, I truly believe that big pharma is fully aware that we are fully capable of healing ourselves, but they would never want us to know that. But I do believe that there's a lot of distraction from that idea because they're fully aware. Us as humans, we are fully capable of healing ourselves, and I believe we are capable of healing ourselves from anything. Even if the doctor tells you that it's irreversible, I do not believe that.
I'm going to go ahead and disagree with you. I don't think pharma knows. And I think that people like you and I know, and that's why we have to spread the message. And I think they have
Yes.
a perverse worldview where they think that we're all dysfunctional and it's their job to somehow like suppress our dysfunction in some sort of like misguided, don't even get me started. But
Yeah, I could go on. I could go on about it.
yeah. So basically, hold on a second. Going through the other door. Sorry about that. So, where were we? Tell me,
So
or I got off track there. I didn't.
So yeah, I'll kind of jump back on track. So the solution to all of this, the solution to what we were talking about, and kind of the work that I guide people through and hold space for, is to, in these patterns, in these responses, these trauma responses that your defense system has been conditioned to keep repeating. The idea of looking at the trauma, feeling the emotions fully through, is to be able to go through what's called this reenactment loop. And so what happens is when your body and when your subconscious, when you face an event that brings you back to that survival state, the idea is the subconscious wants your body to play the experience, the original experience again, so that you can find an alternative and an adaptive response, right?
A new strategy.
A new strategy. But for most of us, because we have never been held in that process and guided through that process of like, how do I look at my trauma and feel it again? Like, hell no, I don't want to do that. Because most of us don't know how that process looks like, we'll just keep going back to the same response, the same defense mechanism. So the idea is and the work that I do is to hold you in that journey, hold you and guide you in that journey to feel, not to revisit the trauma. I don't want this to be like you're reliving it, because that's not the case. What happens is when you're not held in this and when you're not guided through it, if you do try to do it on your own, you can actually relive it and re-traumatize yourself. And so that's why it's important to have what we call space held. And so what happens is you get to feel these emotions again and start to create a new adaptive response. And slowly but surely, what happens is the patterns that were so subconscious become conscious. And once they become conscious, that's when you can go back into whatever response needs to happen in order to heal. And it's such a beautiful light. I always say this work is not easy. This work is deep work, but the light at the end of each layer is remarkable. And it's something that I know that I was placed on this earth to do, and it's so important to guide people in this, especially right now, especially what's going on in the world. It's so important that people know about this and know how important it is, because what happens is the relationship that we have with our wounds, with our trauma, when we continue to dismiss them, distract ourselves from them, numb ourselves from them, these wounds show up, and where they show up in our life is in our relationships. That's where they're always going to show up. And so if you are somebody who's like, I don't know why I just attract these types of people, I don't know why I just I'm always like repeating the same types of relationships. It's not because of those people. It's because of the things that you are accepting and allowing because of the wounds that you have not looked at. And so it's important to consciously heal so that you can then start attracting into your life what you've always desired. It's not until you start looking at yourself that it's not until then that you will start receiving exactly what you want.
Wow, I really love everything you said there. And it reminds me of two sayings I really like. Number one is that you have to feel it to heal it. I'm sure you've heard that one.
Absolutely.
And then the other one is that we can't change the past, but we can change what it means.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's so important for us to rewrite our own stories. We have these stories in our life, and based on our experiences, our past experiences, that is how we perceive the world. There are things that have happened to us that we literally can't perceive things the same as another person, because I've had so much different experience. So to begin to go back and look at those things, acknowledge them, acknowledge the story that was created from that experience, and then you can go back and it's reparenting yourself. The inner child work is one of the most important things that I do, because you literally can go back and talk to your inner child and tell them you're safe, you're important, your voice is heard, I love you, like it's safe to express these emotions. And you can start to rewrite the stories of what happened in those experiences and start to forgive. Forgiveness, oh, the ultimate freedom. I always ask my clients, when they're talking about certain people in their life, because you can ask somebody like, have you forgiven someone? And people are like, yeah, of course. Like I said, I forgive you. But I always ask people, have you gone through the forgiveness process? Because it's not just like, excuse me, it's not like, frick it, like I'm just gonna forgive this person and forget about it. It's a whole process in your body that has to happen. So doing these things allow these things to come to fruition, and you get to cultivate all of this beautiful compassion and forgiveness, not only for other people but for yourself first. And then when you do experience challenges in your life, you're not so hard on yourself. You're like, all right, I got this.
Awesome. Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's like so needed. A couple of things I would like to do. If I'd love to hear more of your story of, how you got into this work, and then talk about more, of like, yeah, what you actually do and how people, can heal from this. Maybe we talk about some tips that people can implement on their own. And then if they're like, looking for more help and they got to go deeper and they got serious trauma and they want to work with you, is how they can, what that looks like and how they get in touch with you. But I want to hear your story. Please tell me.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you so much. It took me a really long time to feel comfortable talking publicly about my story. And now that I'm in the space that I am doing so, it feels like complete freedom. So thank you for giving me that opportunity to do so. So I am 30 years old. I have struggled with alcoholism since I was 14 years old. And in that addiction, it really, really allowed me to stay so safe from being connected to my emotions, being connected to my energy, being connected to really anyone in my life. I was completely disconnected from absolutely everything. And the scary thing about my addiction is that I was very, very functional, extremely functional. I worked jobs and had relationships, but I was drinking all day, every day, and that was the only thing I was consuming. And I was like working out sometimes, and so I thought I was happy. I was like, yeah, I'm good. I don't have any trauma. I remember when I was like 25, I'm like, yeah, I haven't really been through anything. I was that disconnected. And so around the age of 27, there were some things happening in my family. A family member was getting sick, and at the time I was also getting sick, and I wasn't fully aware of it. I started to realize it because my body was giving me symptoms, but I was ignoring them. And then finally, on April 18th in 2019, I went to the hospital, and I was diagnosed with a liver condition. And it was what I like to call now the best day of my life, because it was like I was given permission to finally stop drinking. I had been praying to stop for a long time, and wasn't really finding the answers, even after getting a couple DUIs and things like that. It was just, it was not, my body thought that I needed the alcohol. And so, so that happened. And since then, I had still struggled. I didn't completely quit then. My addiction still tried to convince me that I could still use alcohol and whatnot. But what happened was, when I was given that diagnosis, I held a lot of shame around it. A lot of shame. My mother was with me in the hospital, and I told her that I only wanted her to know, and for me to know, and then the man that I marry, and that was it. And she agreed to it, and I was like, okay, cool. So I lied to everybody. I told everyone I had an ulcer. I told everyone I'm good, don't worry about me. I just felt so much shame around what I had done to my body, and I essentially felt unlovable because of it. And so what would happen was, when I would think about telling my husband, my future husband, I would feel it right here, underneath my rib cage. And what that is in the energetic world is, it's the energetic place of your power and your worth. And so and at the time I didn't know what any of that meant, but what I would feel this aching right there, just aching, like it was literally sucking my power. And even though I wasn't fully conscious of what, like, energetically that meant, I just knew, I'm like, I have to tell somebody. I can't keep this in. And I wasn't fully aware of the spiritual community. I thought that there was normal people and hippies. But what happened was, I saw on a dear friend of mine, her Instagram story, I saw a women's retreat, and something in me was just telling me, these are the women you're going to tell. So I went on this retreat of 20 women who I had no idea who they were. I shared my story, and from there, the rest is history. I found my community. I found people who weren't looking at me like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. It was so empowering. They were like, thank you for sharing. It was the most empowering experience of my life, being able to share that part of me, and number one, not be felt sorry for, or people judging me, or like asking me questions. They were just celebrating the fact that I shared that with them. And that changed my entire life. That changed my entire perspective on this work of like expressing yourself and expressing your emotions. And so after that, it really just all blossomed from there. I became Reiki certified. I started working with clients one-on-one. From there, I started really seeing the passion I had specifically for trauma. And then from there, I've become breathwork certified and some other certifications. And so the work that I do is really, really important to me. I know that it's my dharma, it's my life's path. And I'm just really grateful for my life experience now, whereas not too long ago, I held a lot of shame and regret for my past. But there's really nothing I would change about it. And I'm just so grateful to have, spaces like these to now speak about it and invite others to come on in. The water's warm.
So what I want to do next is that people who know that they're dealing with this kind of thing and these like patterns they want to get out of, past trauma, and that they know it's something that they want to deal with. Perhaps they're scared, or they just don't know where to begin. Like, how do they get started healing this kind of thing?
It's definitely different for everyone, but to begin with, find somebody that you resonate with. There's tons of people on Instagram. There's tons of people that you can find that just start watching them speak, start watching how they operate, and find somebody that you're resonating with and reach out to them. I adore the work that I do, and I hold very dear space and safe space. And so if somebody wants to reach out to me, basically what I would do is just invite them in for a session. And what that would look like was basically just us talking one-on-one, and then we could go from there, because it's different with each person. Every time I meet with somebody, it could be that they want to drop right into the breath work. Maybe it's Reiki first, which the Reiki really allows us to go deeper into their story and become aware of things that they or may not be aware of. But I do so many different types of work. I do one-on-one sessions. I also do full mentorships, and I do workshops all the time. I think a workshop is a great way to kind of dip your toes in, a group workshop if you're comfortable with that. But really just allowing yourself to resonate with the person and honor it. Honor if you don't resonate with the person, just like a therapist. If you go see a therapist, you don't want to continue going to them just because you're afraid to displease them. Really making sure that that person resonates with you and you feel safe in their presence, because safety is the number one foundation of holding space. Is we want to make sure that the client always feels safe.
Okay. And so, I mean, I have a lot of people who are, all over the world. I mean, I get messages in languages I can't even read. So if people are watching this and they're not local to where we are and they're interested in doing this kind of stuff, what's some advice for them?
So the beautiful thing about energy work is that it can always be done online. Energy can transfer between time and space. However, depending on where they live, there's most likely a small or large community that can assist them in really being introduced to this type of healing. But that's the beautiful thing about it, is that I do work online. Some of my most potent sessions have been distance Reiki sessions.
Okay, cool. Well, I am pretty much asked you everything that I kind of know. If people have questions in the comments, I haven't seen anybody ask anything, but if you have any questions for Mikaela or myself, definitely drop them. We'd love to answer your questions. And I know, Mikaela, we set aside extra time because you had a lot to talk about. And is there anything that I didn't ask that you want to go into, or like things you feel like we should talk about that people, you think people should know? Like, the floor is yours.
I think you asked everything that I was planning on covering, so thank you for that. If there's one thing that I could say, I just want people to know that whatever you are going through, whatever you are experiencing, you are capable of healing. Everybody is capable of healing. It just takes the commitment to self, and just really reiterating the possibility of that, just knowing that you are able to heal.
All right. Well, that's a great way to end it. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Dr. Ben. I appreciate you so much. I hope you have a great day.
You too.